Somewhere in the bustling streets of Beirut, a man is stacking paper-thin layers of marinated lamb onto a towering vertical spit. The charcoal hisses, the meat turns slowly, the smell drifts down the entire block. And 7,000 miles away, in a loud, colorful taqueria in Mexico City, another cook is doing something that looks almost identical, but tastes like an entirely different universe. Two foods, two continents, 2,000 years of history between them. One comes from the ancient crossroads of civilization, where empires rose and fell and left their recipes behind. The other is the product of one of the most fascinating culinary migrations the world has ever seen. A story of immigrants, spice routes, and a cooking technique that crossed oceans and reinvented itself in a country that was not its own. Today, we are going head-to-head. Shawarma, the legendary street food of Lebanon and Turkey, versus tacos al pastor, Mexico's most iconic and most beloved taco. We will battle them across 10 categories: history, appearance, ingredients, nutrition, price, global reach, cultural meaning, surprising facts, international influence, and finally, the total score. 1 point per category, 10 categories, 1 winner. But here is the thing, and we need to say this right now, before the first point is awarded. These two foods are more connected than you might think. There is a secret origin story that links them across continents. A migration that changed Mexican cuisine forever. And by the end of this video, you will never look at either of them the same way again. Stay with us, because the twist in this story hits around the 10-minute mark, and you will not want to miss it. The battle starts now. Let's go back. Way back. Shawarma. The word shawarma comes from the Turkish word çevirme, which means simply turning. And that is the key to everything. The technique of stacking seasoned meat onto a vertical rotating spit and shaving it as it cooks is the foundation of the entire shawarma tradition. This technique has its roots in the Ottoman Empire, the vast, multi-century superpower that stretched from southeastern Europe through the Middle East and into North Africa. The Ottomans were extraordinary at many things, and one of them was food. Their palace kitchens in Istanbul were among the most sophisticated culinary institutions in the world. And somewhere inside that tradition, historians place it most likely in the region of Bursa, in what is now northwestern Turkey, during the 19th century. The vertical spit roast as we know it today was born. The technique is believed to have evolved from the döner kebab, which became enormously popular in Turkey and gradually spread outward. As the Ottoman Empire extended its reach, so did this method of cooking meat. But shawarma became specifically associated with the Levantine region, present-day Lebanon, Syria, Palestine, Israel, and Jordan, where it was adapted with local spices, local meats, and local flavors. In Lebanon, shawarma became something almost sacred. It was the working man's meal, the street corner lunch, the midnight snack after a wedding, the thing you ate when nothing else would do. Lebanese shawarma developed its own distinct character: lemony garlic sauce, warm flatbread, pickled vegetables, fresh tomatoes. It was, and remains, one of the defining flavors of the entire Levant. The earliest recorded references to the vertical spit roasting technique in written Ottoman sources date to the 1800s. By the early 20th century, it had spread widely across the Middle East. By the mid-20th century, waves of Lebanese and Syrian immigration would carry it to South America, West Africa, Europe, and eventually every corner of the globe. Shawarma carries with it the weight of empires, of trade routes, of centuries of culinary refinement. It is not just a food. It is a document of history, pressed into warm bread and handed to you over a street counter. Tacos al pastor. Now here is where things get extraordinary. Tacos al pastor, which translates loosely as shepherd-style tacos, did not begin in Mexico. Or rather, it did not begin as Mexican. It began as Lebanese. In the early 20th century, waves of Lebanese and Syrian Christian immigrants arrived in Mexico, particularly in cities like Puebla and Mexico City. They brought with them their culture, their language, their faith, and their food, including, crucially, the vertical spit roasting technique they had inherited from the Ottoman tradition. These immigrants began setting up taquerias and small restaurants. They brought the shawarma method with them, initially cooking lamb in the style they knew. But Mexico was not the Middle East. Lamb was expensive and less available. The local palate was different. The ingredients surrounding them were entirely different. And so, gradually, an extraordinary fusion took place. The Lebanese vertical spit became the trompo, the spinning top, named for its shape. The lamb became pork, which was far more affordable and widely available in Mexico. The Middle Eastern spice blend of cumin, allspice, and cinnamon met the Mexican pantry. And something astonishing happened. Dried chilies were added. Achiote paste, made from annatto seeds, turned the meat a vivid, deep red. Pineapple, sweet, acidic, tropical, was placed at the top of the spit, basting the meat with its juices as it rotated and caramelized in the heat. The result was something that was neither purely Lebanese nor purely Mexican. It was something entirely new, something that had never existed in the world before. Tacos al pastor began appearing in Puebla, Mexico, possibly as early as the 1930s, though documented records become clearer through the 1950s and 1960s. By the second half of the 20th century, they had spread across Mexico City and become one of the defining elements of Mexican street food culture. They are younger than shawarma in documented culinary history, but their origin story is arguably more complex, more layered, and more cinematically dramatic than almost any other dish in the world. Here is how we call this one. Shawarma has the longer, more extensively documented history, stretching back through the Ottoman Empire to at least the early 1800s, with cultural roots that go even deeper. It carries centuries of culinary evolution across multiple civilizations. Tacos al pastor has a shorter documented timeline, but an astonishing origin story, a story of immigration, cultural fusion, and culinary reinvention that is almost without parallel. Both are historically rich. Both are culturally significant. But on depth, age, and scope of documented influence, the point goes to shawarma. Shawarma takes the point. Close your eyes for a moment. We are going to paint a picture. Shawarma. Appearance. This is a street counter somewhere in Beirut, or Amman, or Istanbul, or a side street in Buenos Aires, where a Lebanese community has been for 100 years. In front of you, there is a vertical spit, a towering column of meat that can stand 3, 4, sometimes 5 feet tall. It rotates slowly, constantly, in front of a glowing heat source. The outer layer of the meat is caramelized to a deep, burnished mahogany. Fat glistens and drips. As the cook shaves the outer layer with a long, fluid knife, the meat falls in thin, curling ribbons that catch the light. Then it goes into bread. In Lebanon and much of the Arab world, this is warm, pillowy flatbread. Sometimes a thin lavash, sometimes a thicker pita. The bread is filled generously. Garlic sauce, toum, white as snow and sharp as a knife. Or tahini, nutty and pale gold. Sliced tomatoes, pickled cucumber, pickled turnip, dyed vivid purple by beet juice. French fries, sometimes, tucked inside. The whole thing is wrapped tightly, like a parcel, pressed on a grill until the outside is golden and crisp, handed to you in a piece of white paper. It is compact, cylindrical, visually confident. When you unwrap it, the cross-section is beautiful. Layers of color, contrasting textures, steam rising from the warm interior. Tacos al pastor. Appearance now. This is Mexico City, late at night. A taqueria is open. neon lights buzzing above it. The trompo stands in the center, spinning. The meat is stacked in a cone shape, wider at the base, narrowing toward the top, where an entire pineapple sits like a crown, dripping sweet juice down onto the meat below. The color is extraordinary. Achiote and dried chilies have dyed the pork a vivid, almost luminous red-orange. The caramelized outer layer is darker, richer, blistered in places where it has pressed closest to the heat. The cook uses a small, curved knife to shave the meat in rapid, practiced movements. They flick thin corn tortillas onto one hand, catch the falling meat, and finish with a fragment of pineapple shaved directly from the top of the trompo. The taco is small and round, a double layer of corn tortillas, soft and slightly charred. The bright orange meat piled on top, a scattering of white diced onion, fresh cilantro, a wedge of lime, to be squeezed over everything. Salsa verde or salsa roja on the side. It is vivid. It is saturated with color. The red of the meat against the white onion and the bright green of the cilantro against the pale yellow of the corn tortilla. It is a visual composition that food photographers have been trying to do justice to for decades. Shawarma is a study in warm, layered, wrapping elegance. It is generous, substantial, beautifully constructed. Tacos al pastor is a riot of color. The glowing trompo, the vivid red-orange meat, the pineapple crown, the assembly. It is among the most visually spectacular street food presentations anywhere in the world. On pure visual drama, the taco al pastor is almost impossible to beat. Tacos al pastor takes the point. Shawarma. Ingredients. The foundation of shawarma is the meat. In Lebanon and the broader Levant, traditional shawarma is most commonly made with lamb, chicken, or a beef-lamb combination. Turkish döner, the closest Turkish cousin, traditionally uses beef or lamb. The marinade is where the magic lives. A classic Lebanese chicken shawarma marinade typically includes lemon juice, olive oil, garlic, and a blend of warm spices: cumin, coriander, cinnamon, allspice, turmeric, black pepper, paprika, and sometimes a touch of cardamom and cloves. This spice palette is distinctly Levantine. It is warm, aromatic, complex, built over centuries of spice trade through the region. The meat is marinated, sometimes for a day, sometimes longer, then layered onto the vertical spit, interspersed with fat. As the spit turns, the fat bastes the meat continuously. The outer layers caramelize and char slightly. The interior stays tender and juicy. The accompaniments are just as important. Toum, the Lebanese garlic sauce, is a culinary achievement in its own right. Made from garlic, lemon juice, oil, and salt, emulsified into a fluffy, intensely flavored white cream. Tahini sauce, pickled vegetables, fresh tomatoes, sometimes hummus, sometimes French fries tucked inside the wrap. The bread itself, thin lavash or warm pita, is chosen deliberately. It must be supple enough to wrap without cracking, sturdy enough to contain everything inside. Tacos al pastor. Ingredients. Tacos al pastor begins with pork, specifically thin slices of pork shoulder or pork butt, layered onto the trompo in the same vertical spit tradition inherited from Lebanon. But the marinade is where Mexico claims this dish as entirely its own. The base is achiote paste, a distinctly Mexican and Central American ingredient made from annatto seeds, which gives the meat its iconic deep red-orange color and a subtle earthy flavor. Combined with dried chilies, commonly guajillo and ancho, vinegar, garlic, cumin, oregano, black pepper, and sometimes a touch of cinnamon and cloves, a whisper of the dish's Middle Eastern heritage, the marinade is layered and complex. And then, the pineapple. This is the ingredient that makes tacos al pastor unlike anything else in the world. Fresh pineapple is placed at the very top of the trompo. As the spit rotates in front of the heat, Pineapple juice drips slowly down through every layer of meat. It caramelizes on contact. It tenderizes the pork through its natural enzymes. It introduces a sweet, acidic brightness that cuts through the richness of the fat. When the taco is assembled, a thin slice of pineapple is shaved directly onto the taco from the top of the trompo, a move that is as theatrical as it is delicious. The corn tortilla, small, double-layered, slightly charred, is the ideal vessel. Diced white onion and fresh cilantro are the only other additions needed. Lime, salsa, done. Shawarma's marinade is ancient, sophisticated, and built on one of the world's great spice traditions. Its preparation requires skill and patience. Tacos al pastor matches it on complexity, adds the extraordinary innovation of pineapple as a cooking agent, and achieves a flavor profile that is genuinely unlike anything else on earth. The achiote chili-pineapple combination is a culinary breakthrough. This category is extremely close, but the creative leap of the pineapple, its functional role in the cooking process, and its flavor contribution, tips the balance. Tacos al pastor takes the point. Shawarma. Nutrition. A standard chicken shawarma wrap, the most common version worldwide, contains approximately 400 to 550 calories, depending on portion size and accompaniments. The chicken itself is a lean protein source, high in essential amino acids, and relatively low in saturated fat. The marinade contributes minimal calories. The real variables are the accompaniments. Toom, the garlic sauce, is made primarily from oil and is calorie-dense, but it is used in relatively small quantities. Tahini sauce adds healthy fats from sesame. The pickled vegetables add flavor with almost 0 calories and contribute to gut health. The flatbread adds carbohydrates, typically 200 to 250 calories worth on its own. On the positive nutritional side, shawarma with chicken is genuinely a balanced meal. Protein, complex carbohydrates, healthy fats, vegetables, beneficial spices, cumin, turmeric, and coriander all have documented anti-inflammatory properties. Garlic is well researched for its cardiovascular benefits. Lamb shawarma is richer and higher in saturated fat, but lamb also provides iron and zinc at higher levels than most meats. The main nutritional caution with shawarma is sodium. Pickles, sauces, and seasoning can push sodium content high, particularly in takeaway preparations. Tacos al pastor. Nutrition. A standard serving of tacos al pastor, typically 2 or 3 tacos, comes in at approximately 350 to 500 calories in total. Each individual taco, with 2 small corn tortillas and a standard portion of meat, runs roughly 150 to 180 calories. The pork itself is higher in fat than chicken, but pork shoulder also provides B vitamins, zinc, and phosphorus in significant quantities. The achiote marinade adds antioxidants from annatto. Dried chilies contribute capsaicin, which research links to metabolic health benefits, and a range of vitamins including vitamin C and vitamin A. The pineapple is nutritionally interesting. Fresh pineapple contains bromelain, a natural enzyme with anti-inflammatory properties. It also contributes vitamin C and manganese. In the quantities used in a taco, the nutritional contribution is small, but it is there. Corn tortillas are genuinely a better nutritional choice than many bread alternatives. They are lower in calories than flour tortillas, naturally gluten-free, and in Mexico are often made from masa harina treated with lime, a process called nixtamalization that increases the bioavailability of niacin and other nutrients. The main nutritional concern with tacos al pastor is that pork can be high in saturated fat, depending on the cut used, and the calorie count can escalate quickly with multiple tacos. Both are reasonable street food choices. Neither is a nutritional superfood, but neither is junk food either. Chicken shawarma has a marginal advantage in terms of lean protein and lower saturated fat. The wrap format also means a single shawarma is a complete, self-contained meal. Tacos al pastor are lighter individually, but people rarely eat just one. On overall nutritional balance, shawarma in its most common chicken form edges ahead. Shawarma takes the point. Before we get into the price battle, we need to stop for a second, because we are about to tell you something about the relationship between these two foods that most people simply do not know. Something that will reframe everything you have already watched. We are saving it for the surprising facts section, just a few minutes from now. If you have been half watching, this is the moment to come back fully, because what we are about to reveal changes the entire story. But first, money. Because great food has to be affordable to be truly great. Shawarma. Price in Lebanon, a shawarma sandwich from a street shop costs the equivalent of approximately $1 to $3. In Turkey, a doner kebab, the cousin of shawarma, is similarly priced and equally accessible. In the Arab world more broadly, shawarma is definitively working-class food. It is what you eat when you are hungry, in a hurry, and not looking to spend money. The portions are generous. The ingredients are economical when bought at scale. The street vendor format keeps overheads low. In Western Europe and North America, where Lebanese, Turkish, and broadly Middle Eastern immigrant communities have established shawarma shops in virtually every major city, prices are naturally higher. A shawarma wrap in London, Paris, or New York typically runs between $7 and $12, depending on the neighborhood and the quality of the establishment. Shawarma has succeeded globally, in part precisely because it is affordable. It competes favorably with fast food at virtually every price point, while offering dramatically more flavor and cultural substance. Tacos al pastor. Price in Mexico City, a single taco al pastor from a street taqueria costs approximately 8 to 15 Mexican pesos, the equivalent of roughly 50 cents to $1. This makes tacos al pastor among the most affordable complete foods in the entire world. A full meal of 3 tacos with salsa and a drink comes to approximately $2 to $4 in a typical Mexico City street setting. Even in upscale taquerias, prices rarely exceed double that. Outside Mexico, prices rise significantly. In the United States, tacos al pastor from a quality establishment run approximately $3 to $5 per taco. In Europe, where Mexican food is less entrenched in everyday food culture, prices can be even higher. But within Mexico, which has a population of over 130 million people and a deeply embedded street taco culture, tacos al pastor remain one of the most democratically accessible foods imaginable. They are eaten by everyone, at every income level, at every time of day and night. Both foods are extraordinarily affordable in their home regions. Both are priced higher in international markets, as is the nature of exported food culture. The difference is in the floor. At roughly 50 cents per unit, a single taco al pastor in Mexico is among the cheapest satisfying meals on earth. A shawarma, even in its home market, is a full wrap. More food, but at a higher price point per serving. On raw accessibility and lowest possible price of entry, the taco al pastor wins this category. Tacos al pastor takes the point. Shawarma, global footprint here, is a number for you. There are more than 50,000 shawarma restaurants and street vendors in the United Kingdom alone. In Germany, with its large Turkish community, doner kebab shops number in the hundreds of thousands. In Brazil, Argentina, and across Latin America, shawarma arrived with Lebanese immigrants and became deeply embedded in local food culture. The Lebanese diaspora, one of the most widely distributed and economically successful diaspora communities in the world, carried shawarma to every continent. In 2012, something happened that no marketing campaign could have manufactured. In The Avengers, Tony Stark, after a battle that nearly destroyed New York, looks at a shawarma restaurant and says, "I could eat. There's a shawarma joint about 2 blocks from here. I don't know what it is, but I want to try it." And then, in a post-credits scene, the Avengers are shown eating shawarma in silence, exhausted and victorious. Shawarma sales spiked worldwide the following week. It became a cultural moment. One of the most commercially powerful food endorsements in cinema history, completely unintentional, entirely organic. The word shawarma is now understood in virtually every country on Earth. On social media, shawarma content generates hundreds of millions of views annually. It has become a symbol of Middle Eastern food culture internationally. Tacos al pastor, global footprint tacos al pastor, are Mexico's most iconic street food, and Mexico's food culture has a global profile that is enormous. Mexican restaurants exist in virtually every country in the world. Mexican food was designated by UNESCO as an intangible cultural heritage of humanity in 2010. On social media, taco content is among the most engaging food content in the world. The hashtag #tacos has billions of interactions across platforms. Tacos al pastor specifically generate enormous engagement. The theatrical trompo, the shaving of the meat, the pineapple crown, the expert assembly, all of it is inherently cinematic and deeply satisfying to watch. In the United States, which shares a 3,000-kilometer border with Mexico and has a Mexican-American population of tens of millions, tacos al pastor are not exotic. They are mainstream. They are available from food trucks in Portland, restaurants in Chicago, street corners in Los Angeles, late-night joints in Houston. Internationally, tacos al pastor are less dominant than Mexican food broadly, but they are one of the most recognizable Mexican dishes, even to people who have never visited Mexico. This is genuinely close. Shawarma has a wider international footprint, present in more countries and more deeply embedded in more food cultures, partly thanks to the scale of Lebanese and Turkish diaspora communities worldwide. The Avengers moment gave it a cultural visibility that money cannot buy. Tacos al pastor have a massive social media presence and enormous recognition, but their global spread is somewhat narrower, more concentrated in North America and Latin America. Shawarma takes the point. Shawarma, cultural weight in Lebanon. Shawarma is not just food. It is identity. It is the smell of cities. It is the thing you eat with your best friend at midnight. It is the subject of arguments. Which shop is the best? Which sauce is correct? Whether chicken or meat is superior? That Lebanese people will have with absolute conviction and no resolution. Shawarma shops have historically been social gathering points in Lebanese cities. They are open late, sometimes all night. They serve everyone. In a country that has experienced enormous social, political, and economic turbulence, the shawarma shop has endured. Consistent, warm, always there. Across the Arab world, shawarma occupies this same space. It is democratic food in the deepest sense, not politically, but socially. It does not belong to any class or religion or region. It belongs to everyone. In Turkey, doner kebab carries similar cultural weight. It is the national quick-service meal, consumed everywhere, by everyone, every day. Tacos al pastor, cultural weight. In Mexico City, tacos al pastor are more than a meal. They are a way of life. The taquero, the taco cook, is a figure of genuine respect in Mexican urban culture. The best taqueros in Mexico City have lines around the block every night. Some have been using the same trompo, the same recipe, the same technique for 30 or 40 years. They are considered masters of their craft, with the same respect given to any skilled artisan. Mexico City has been called the taco capital of the world, and the taco al pastor is often cited as the city's single defining food. It is available around the clock. Late-night tacos al pastor after a concert or a night out are a cultural institution, something that connects generations of Mexicans to each other and to their city. The UNESCO recognition of Mexican cuisine as an intangible cultural heritage explicitly acknowledges the deep relationship between Mexican identity and food culture. Tacos al pastor are central to that relationship. Both foods are deeply embedded in national and regional identity. Both carry social and emotional weight that goes far beyond nutrition. The difference here is in the specificity of cultural embedding. While shawarma is important to multiple cultures across a wide geographic area, tacos al pastor have a particularly intense relationship with a single city, Mexico City, that is unique in global food culture. The taquero tradition, the late-night ritual, the UNESCO heritage status, these give tacos al pastor a cultural depth that is hard to surpass. Tacos al pastor takes the point. All right, we promised you something. We told you, around the 10-minute mark, that there was a secret hiding inside this entire comparison. A secret that links these two foods across 7,000 miles and 100 years of history. Here it is. Tacos al pastor are descended directly from shawarma. Not inspired by, not similar to, descended from. When Lebanese and Syrian immigrants arrived in Mexico in the early 20th century, most of them from the Levant, many of them Christian families fleeing instability in the late Ottoman and post-Ottoman period, they brought their cooking traditions with them. They built communities in Puebla and Mexico City. They opened restaurants, and they brought the vertical spit, the exact same rotating spit technique that produces shawarma. Initially, these immigrants made something called tacos árabes, Arabic tacos. They used flatbread instead of corn tortillas, and they used lamb or beef in the Levantine tradition. Tacos árabes still exist in Puebla today, and they are essentially shawarma in a flour tortilla, a direct, unmodified descendant. But over decades, the recipe evolved. Lamb gave way to pork. Flatbread gave way to corn tortilla. The Levantine spices were supplemented with Mexican chilies and achiote. The pineapple was added, possibly borrowed from a nearby fruit vendor, or possibly inspired by the sweetness that fruit brings to roasted meat. And tacos árabes became tacos al pastor. This means that when you eat a taco al pastor, you are eating a dish that is, at its structural core, a Lebanese shawarma that spent 80 years in Mexico and became something entirely its own. That is not a culinary footnote. That is one of the most remarkable food migration stories in modern history. More surprising facts. A single shawarma spit can hold up to 60 kilograms of meat, roughly 130 pounds. In busy establishments in Beirut or Istanbul, an entire spit can be consumed in a single day. The world record for the largest shawarma ever made was set in Beirut in 2017, weighing in at 4.7 tons. That is nearly 10,500 pounds of shawarma. It took 23 hours to cook. In Mexico, a taquero elite exists. El Huequito, a taqueria that opened in Mexico City in 1959, is often credited as one of the first establishments to serve what became the modern taco al pastor. It still operates today. It has served tacos from the same location for over 60 years. The pineapple on the trompo has a functional purpose beyond flavor. The natural enzymes in fresh pineapple, particularly bromelain, are a powerful meat tenderizer. The juice dripping down through 60 kilograms of stacked pork shoulder actively breaks down protein fiber throughout the entire cooking process. The pineapple is doing chemistry, not just adding sweetness. Shawarma has been to space. In 2019, Israeli astronaut Eitan Stibbe brought specially prepared shawarma, freeze-dried and repackaged, aboard a mission to the International Space Station, making it, unofficially, one of the first Middle Eastern street foods consumed in orbit. Both foods have extraordinary stories, but the revelation that tacos al pastor are a direct descendant of shawarma, separated by an ocean, a century, and a complete culinary transformation, is one of the most remarkable stories in the history of food. It is the kind of fact that makes people stop mid-bite. The connection between them is not just culinary trivia. It is a story about immigration, adaptation, creativity, and the way human beings carry culture across the world and reshape it into something new. On sheer surprise value and historical drama, this category is shared. A rare double point. One for each, because neither food can tell this story without the other. Both foods share the point. Shawarma. International reach. The shawarma's journey outward from the Middle East is one of the great food diaspora stories of the 20th century. Lebanese immigration alone has established shawarma in South America, particularly Brazil and Argentina, which have among the largest Lebanese diaspora communities in the world. In West Africa, where Lebanese merchants settled in countries like Senegal, Ivory Coast, and Nigeria, and of course throughout Europe, North America, and Australia. In Germany, the Turkish döner, the structural cousin of the shawarma, became so prevalent that it is now considered by many Germans to be a national dish. Germany's döner industry generates an estimated 2.5 billion euros annually. There are more döner kebab shops in Berlin than in Istanbul. Shawarma has influenced the development of other dishes, the gyro in Greece, the dürüm in Turkey, the shawarma adaptations across Latin America. It is a dish that generates culinary offspring everywhere it travels. Tacos al pastor. International reach. Tacos al pastor's international influence is growing rapidly, but it is more recent and more geographically concentrated. In the United States, the trompo has become a fixture of serious Mexican food establishments, food trucks, and late-night taquerias from coast to coast. Chefs at high-end restaurants have incorporated al pastor flavors into sophisticated menus. The dish has attracted attention in food media at every level, from street food documentary series to Michelin-starred adaptations. Internationally, tacos al pastor are present wherever Mexican food culture has established itself, which is, increasingly, everywhere. In Japan, which has a passionate relationship with global street food, tacos have a dedicated following. In the UK, taco restaurants have proliferated significantly in the past decade. But here is the interesting limitation. The trompo requires significant investment and expertise. You cannot make authentic tacos al pastor without one. This creates a barrier that the shawarma, which faces the same barrier, has simply had more decades to overcome. Both dishes have generated significant international influence. Shawarma has had more time, has a wider diaspora infrastructure, and has demonstrably influenced the food culture of more countries. The doner kebab gyro shawarma family of dishes collectively represents one of the most internationally successful food traditions in history. Shawarma takes the point. Here we are. 10 categories, 9 categories decided, 1 dramatic tiebreak remaining. But before we go there, let us remember what we have learned today. We learned that shawarma carries the weight of the Ottoman Empire, that it emerged from one of history's great centers of civilization, that it traveled the world inside the suitcases and the memories of millions of immigrants, that it now feeds billions of people, on every continent, every single day. We learned that tacos al pastor were born from the meeting of two cultures, Lebanese immigrants and Mexican soil, and became something entirely unprecedented. That the pineapple on the trompo is not a decoration, but a culinary innovation. That the taco al pastor is, in the deepest sense, a child of shawarma that grew up to be its own magnificent, irreducible self. 5 points each. After 9 categories, and a shared point in the most dramatic round of all, we are completely level, and so we go to the one question that has never been decided by points. The one question that all of this has been building toward. Which one would you choose? Think about what you now know. Shawarma is ancient, globally dominant, historically deep, nutritionally solid, and internationally embedded. It is a food that empires built and that diaspora communities have carried to every corner of the earth. Tacos al pastor are younger, more vivid, more theatrically assembled, more affordable at their cheapest point, and culturally embedded in the identity of one of the world's great food cities. They are also, and this is the fact we cannot escape, the offspring of shawarma. They are what happens when great food meets a new world and becomes something new. If the story of these two foods tells us anything, it is this. Food does not belong to countries. Food belongs to people. It travels with them, changes with them, and sometimes, when conditions are exactly right, it transforms into something no one could have predicted. A Lebanese immigrant in Puebla, Mexico, sometime in the 1930s, looked at a rotating spit of lamb, a nearby pineapple, a stack of corn tortillas, and a jar of dried chilies, and changed the history of Mexican cuisine forever. Without knowing it, without trying to, just by cooking what they knew in the place where they found themselves. That is the story of tacos al pastor, and it is also, in a deeper sense, the story of shawarma, a food that has always traveled, always adapted, always found its way into new hands and new traditions. And the winner, by the closest possible margin, decided not by points, but by the sheer improbability and beauty of its origin story, is a Thai, in the most honest sense. Because these two foods cannot be separated. They are the same story, told in two languages, across two continents, across 100 years. Shawarma is the parent. Tacos al pastor are the child. You cannot crown one without honoring the other. But if you held a gun to our head, if you made us choose a single taco al pastor from a sidewalk taqueria in Mexico City at midnight, or a single shawarma from a shop in Beirut on a warm evening, we would eat both, and we would not apologize. Now it is your turn. Drop your answer in the comments below. Shawarma or tacos al pastor? Which side are you on? Have you tried both? Have you tried neither? Tell us where in the world you are watching from. And here is one more question, because we want to hear your ideas. Which two foods should we put head-to-head next? Should it be sushi versus ceviche? Jerk chicken versus poulet yassa? Peking duck versus Thanksgiving turkey? Leave your suggestion in the comments. The most popular suggestion becomes our next video. Food is not just fuel. It is memory. It is migration. It is the most honest record of who we are and where we have been. We will see you in the next battle.